Hello everyone, this is Tom from Los Angeles. I hope everything is fine. We are here to talk about the third canto of Dante's Divine Comedy. First of all, I would like to thank, first of all, Rose from Scully Landing, because she and her, let's say, gang from Paradise Lost, thanks for the support, and also from and also John for the nice words and support for this project about the Divine Comedy and Dante. We are starting today Canto Third, and as I said, it's in a certain sense where the real action begins, because this is where Dante really gets inside the initial doors, the famous doors of hell, of Inferno. Before we get started, for this canto, I'm going to use the Pinsky translation. I think it's very good. In fact, for this particular canto, it's a very faithful translation, maybe with a couple of exceptions that I will highlight. And then before we begin, I think it's a good moment here to spend only 2 seconds about the overall structure of the Divine Comedy's world. I think everybody is familiar with the inverted cone shape of Inferno, which has been created when Lucifer was thrown down from heaven to earth, and the earth retreated when he fell, and he was fixed in the bottom of hell. On the other side of the earth, the earth produced a very high mountain, which is Purgatory, and on top of Purgatory there is the Garden of Eden, from where Dante then will start flying together with Beatrice towards the 9 circles of heaven. Second thing is, in Canto Third we are in what has been called Anti-Inferno. We are still not technically inside the Inferno, because we still have to cross a Charon, or the river that delimits Inferno. And in this Anti-Inferno is a little bit of an invention from Dante's side, because of the type of sinners who are punished here, and we'll get to that. As a third detail, this is, as we will see, a chapter where Dante shows himself as Dante the pilgrim inside the canto, probably being the closest and being the warmest, and even in terms of tactile sensations, together with Virgil. Virgil shakes his hand, they hug, they're really physically close, and this is done on purpose to signify that Dante is aware of how much of Virgil's Aeneid, especially chapter 6, has been used as a base to build his Canto Third of Inferno. Okay, let's get started. Canto Third. Through me you enter into the city of woes. Through me you enter into eternal pain. Through me you enter the population of loss. This is all capitalized by Pinsky to show that it's the writing on the wall of the door of hell. Justice moved my higher maker, in power divine, wisdom supreme, love primal. No things were before me, not eternal. Eternal I remain. Abandon all hope, you who enter here. This is the famous sentence from this canto. The door, just like many doors in antiquity and in the Middle Ages, had some kind of inscription that said something to the pilgrims, or a warning or a welcome. The wall in hell is also has an inscription, and it's not very warm and fuzzy. It's not very welcoming, because it says really abandon all hope. But probably even more important, it's justifying the existence of hell, and this is from a theological and a philosophical point of view. That's what Dante does here. Fundamentally, the question that is being answered here is, why does inferno? Why does hell exist? And the answer is given by the door itself when it says, justice moved my high maker, in power divine, wisdom supreme, love primal. These three are the members of the Trinity: power divine, God; wisdom supreme, Jesus; and love primal, Holy Spirit. And justice is the reason why hell exists within the Christian theology. Without, if hell didn't exist, there could not be any freedom of will, and as a consequence, there wouldn't be any divine justice. That's what the door is saying. These words I saw inscribed in some dark color over our portal. And so Dante asks Virgil, Master, make clear their meaning, which I find too hard to gather. And then he, Virgil, as one who understands, all fear must be left here, and cowardice die. This is the same word. These are the same words that the Sibyl was saying to Aeneas in the chapter 6 of Aeneid. In fact, if you can, I would also suggest, while you're following Canto 3rd, to have a copy of the chapter 6 of Aeneid, because not because it's the same, but there are many passages that are reflected into Canto 3rd. Together, we have arrived where I've told you. Here you will behold the wretched souls who've lost the good of intellect. Very important description of the damned of hell. They are the wretched souls who've lost the good of intellect. In other words, the damned in hell are not much people who made mistakes, and this is actually part of the St. Thomas Aquinas theology. Not people who make mistakes in themselves, or go outside of the road for a little bit and then they get back into the right direction, but people who lose the intellect, meaning that they have forgotten, or they are not able to understand what really is good for themselves. They think that something is good for themselves, which is really not, and so they make the wrong choices for that reason, for this lack of reasoning properly around what is really good. So it's an ideal incoherence rather than making mistakes that brings people to hell. Then, with good cheer in his expression to encourage me, he placed his hand on mine. This is another kind of sensation of tactile sensation between Virgil and Dante. And so, trusting my guide, I followed him among things undisclosed. The sighs, groans, and laments at first were so loud, resounding through starless air, I began to weep. Strange languages, horrible screams, words imbued with rage of despair, cries as of troubled sleep. We need to imagine the largest possible inside cave, dark cave that we can imagine, almost limitless and completely dark with no light, where the first thing that Dante can perceive are sounds, screams, but not as much screams of pain like he's gonna hear more deeper down in hell. These are incoherent screams and strange languages and noises of hands slapping bodies, and he's completely confused. He starts to cry, which tells you, what kind of hero Dante the Pilgrim is as well. He starts to cry immediately. The next paragraph of beating hands, all fused in a ceaseless flail that churns and frenzies the dark and timeless air. The dark and timeless air is another interpretation that can be argued, because really from the Italian senza tempo tinta means painted in black without time, and so technically where Dante is talking about an environment, a huge room that is dark all the time, day and night, rather than dark and timeless air. So a room that is dark all the time, and I had my head in a swirl, Dante talks about horror, there was horror in my head rather than a swirl. And I cried, "Master, what is this I hear? What people are these whom pain has overcome?" And Virgil, "This is the sorrowful state of souls unsure." Again, I have to make a comment about the Italian translation here, because the misero modo in Italian that Dante uses, many scholars say that it would refer to the sounds. It would refer to the rhythmic scheme of the sounds and the screams, and so to their vocal behavior, rather than to the sorrowful state or something that is referred to their souls. So instead of sorrowful state, maybe a better translation here could be a sorrowful rhythm or sound. That's what Dante is referring to, according to many. Souls. So let's see, who are these souls? Who are these first damned souls that we meet in Inferno? Souls whose lives earn neither honor nor bad fame, and they are mingled with angels of that base sort who, neither rebellious to God nor faithful to him, choose neither side, but kept themselves apart. So fundamentally, these are the so-called uncommitted or neutrals. I saw some people call them uncommitted, some neutrals, but really the meaning is the same. These are people who never committed to anything. They never took a side. They never believed in a particular ideal or principle, and they never fought for a principle. And from Canto Third, we really get the impression that almost, in a sense, even if that's not really completely the case, but almost, Dante despises this type of people, this type of sinners, even more than all the other sinners in hell, because at least they could make a decision. This is an exaggeration, and it's not true, but he has a particular sort of contempt for these uncommitted or for these neutrals. In fact, to the point that later on in the canto he will say, "I've never seen so many souls, so many dead people. I couldn't imagine there were so many." So in terms of volumes and numbers, probably the majority of the people in hell are here in this Anti-Inferno. And let's remember that this doesn't really have any type of match in the sacred scriptures. Maybe some type of hinted details, but it's fundamentally something that Dante made up himself. So they have no, and together with them, there are also those angels who were sent down when Lucifer rebelled against God, and they didn't have the courage to take sides, neither with Lucifer or with God. So they're all in this whirlwind, in this dark whirlwind. Mercy and justice disdain them. Let us not speak of them. Look and pass on. And Dante looks again, and a whirling banner sped at such a rate, it seemed it might never stop. Behind it, a train of souls so long that I would not have thought death had undone so many. This is the quantity, the quantitative comment that I was referring to. What they're doing, these damned souls, they are condemned to constantly follow this banner. It could be a flag, it could be, and we don't know exactly what's on it, maybe it's just empty, as part of the justice system of hell, which is based on the principle of Contrappasso. This principle of Contrappasso says that everybody who acted in a certain way, especially was sinning of a particular sin, was going to be punished with its almost opposite, in a sense, but with its appropriate punishment that is physically reminding them of their sin. So in this case, people who never in life followed any type of ideal or principle, they're condemned for eternity to follow this banner. And I recognized had passed, I beheld the shade of him who made the great refusal, impelled by cowardice. There is a certain consensus that here, the person who made the great refusal, especially at Dante's times, it was very clear for everybody who this person was, and it was Celestine V, who was elected Pope for just before the year 1300, and he was in charge as Pope only for a very short period of time. He was a very spiritual, holy person, but apparently too weak to resist the attacks, the political attacks from his rivals and enemies around. In particular, one particularly aggressive enemy and rival of Celestine V was Boniface VIII, or the person who then, the cardinal who later became Pope Boniface VIII. So, in short, Celestine V came to history as the only Pope who abdicated his position of Pope because under pressure, and there are many stories and reasons to believe that Boniface VIII forced him to abdicate. There are some pretty terrible legends about what Boniface VIII did in order to make him step out. So Dante is particularly angry against Celestine V because he made the great refusal, and as a consequence of that, he doesn't really he doesn't care about the refusal in itself. He cares because the great refusal brought Boniface VIII to power, and Boniface VIII is one of the greatest enemies, personal enemy of Dante. Dante was a white Guelph, while Boniface VIII was with the black Guelphs in Florence, rival factions, and that's why he was exiled, because he was part of the whites. He's blaming Boniface VIII for many of the corrupted ways of the church of his time, and this is why we're going to meet Boniface VIII much lower, in a much deeper level of hell, in a not very pleasant situation. What happens to these damned souls by wasps? They are running after this banner, and their bare skin is galled by wasps and flies, their blood trickling down the face, mingling with tears for harvest underfoot by riding maggots. There are worms on the floor who are eating their blood that is being, it's a very kind of gory image, but all through the Inferno we're going to be presented with this type of gore that's going to then obviously disappear in Purgatory and heaven. Then when I turned my eyes farther along our course, I could make out people upon the shore of some great river, and this river is the Charon river. Master, I said, it seems by this dim light that all these are eager to cross over. Can you tell me by what law and who they are? So here we get to the Charon river, and we get to the first demon, who is Charon. I heard it pronounced Charon by somebody, but I think it's Charon is a little closer to the Greek original pronunciation. Virgil doesn't give Dante an answer right away. He is almost slapping his wrist here. He says, those are things you will discover when we have paused at Charon's dismal shore. And Dante walked on with his head down after that, fearful I had displeased him, and spoke no more. There's a lot of interesting character development here, and the dynamics between the master and the pilgrim. How they, sometimes you just need to be patient before having your answer. Then once they are at the Charon river, they finally see Charon, an old man in a boat, white-haired as he drew. Basically all these next paragraphs have something that is directly taken from chapter 6 of the Aeneid. And so from the physical description of Charon, from the fact that he has fire around his eyes, and that's the only light really that's being described in this dark place. And the first thing that Charon does is scream. Let's remember that Charon in the Divine Comedy is a demon. Of course, that's what Dante did with many of the Greek mythological gods. He took them from the classical stories and myths and turned them into demons, because that's the way they would fit into the Christian theology. So he's a demon here, and he screams to Dante, "Woe to you, wicked souls," and to Virgil as well. "Give up the thought of heaven. I come to ferry you across into eternal dark on the opposite side, into fire and ice." And actually here is screaming to all these souls. He's ferrying them to the other side of the Charon, into hell. "And you there," to Dante, "leave this place, you living soul, stand clear of these who are dead." Many characters within the Divine Comedy will recognize Dante as an exception or a weird thing, somebody in the flesh, or with his living soul, and especially in hell, they will just tell him to get away, to get lost. "By other ports, in a lighter boat," he said, "you will be brought to shore by another way." Here, Charon is telling Dante, this is not your destiny. So, first of all, what are you doing here with your living soul? And second, what are you doing here? Because this is not where your soul is due to appear when you die. You can see here, it's a little bit funny, maybe even endearing in a ridiculous way, how Dante is talking about himself and relieving himself of anxiety about going to hell by having a character telling him that no, he's not due to go to hell. He's going to go to with another lighter boat. He's referring to the boat guided by an angel that ferries people into Purgatory. That's where he's going to go. "My master spoke then, Charon, do not rage. Thus it is willed where everything may be, simply if it is willed." In Italian, this is a formula that Virgil keeps repeating in the Divine Comedy, and it sounds incredibly musical, almost like a nursery rhyme in the Dante original version. It sounds like this: "Vuolsi così colà dove si puote ciò che si vuole. Vuolsi così colà dove si puote ciò che si vuole." It is willed where everything may be, simply if it is willed. In other words, shut up, let us come through. Therefore, oblige and ask no more. Jumping ahead a little bit, until the bow beholds its entire store falling to the earth, so Adam's evil seed swoop from the bank when each is called, as sure as a trained falcon, to cross to the other side of the dark water. There is almost a sense that all of these damned souls who could belong to any circle of hell, here it's everybody. They're basically ferried in, and then everybody will be assigned to their own specific circle. But there is almost a sense that they should be forced by Charon into the boat and to cross the Charon, but that's not the case. In fact, they are almost willingly, despite being extremely desperate, but they swoop from the bank when each is called by Charon, as sure as a trained falcon. So there is a certain energy or force of automation in these souls obeying to the divine law of justice. And that's more or less what Dante is trying to say here. Virgil speaks again. He says, "My son," calling Dante son again and reinforcing again this relationship between not only master and pupil, but even closer, son and father. Said the gentle master, "Here are joined the souls of all who die in the wrath of God. From every country, all of them eager to find their way across the water. From the God of divine justice purse them so, their fear is transmuted to desire." That's the concept that I was trying to express before. Souls who are good never pass this way. Therefore, if you hear Charon complaining at your presence, consider what that means. That's why Charon is complaining in your presence, Dante, because this is his job, and he's doing his job. Now, at this point, Dante is using a literary device to allow him and Virgil to cross the Charon without having them go with Charon into the boat, because only the damned souls take the ferry into the, and Dante and Virgil, well, Dante in particular is not a damned soul. So in order to avoid that, he comes up with this fainting that he does all of a sudden, because there's a big earthquake, and he faints to the ground. He says, the earth began to shake so violently, I shudder, a wind burst, and so I fell as though seized by sleep. This is a literary device, for sure, but at the same time, there are many scholars, I don't know if it's become a consensus yet, but I read it in many different places, many scholars who believe at this point that Dante had some sort of nervous issue or illness. It could be that sometimes he had some seizures during his life, or he might have had a form of epilepsy or even narcolepsy, because he falls like this many times during the Divine Comedy, even when it doesn't make really sense for him to fall down. And sometimes they have commented, why can he just not fall asleep in some place and then wake up somewhere else? In this case, he actually falls on the ground, and the way he describes the symptoms of this falling and this losing conscience all of a sudden, in this way many have seen the symptoms of something deeper, of a nervous illness that he might have had. So this was the third canto of Divine Comedy. Thank you for watching. Look forward to the fourth one. If you're interested, subscribe below in this series of videos, and thanks again for your support.